Hello friends, Jennifer Pearson here, Thistle Gypsy. So I have been making use of my art history tarot for past lives. So I had a number of questions. I don't know if I have 4 or 5 here, but it was just like the stories that these cards can tell I had to share with you. So I'm not using the spread that's in the book. I'm not using any spread. I was thinking in terms of just kind of pulling some cards to get a story, and I thought I was going to stop at 3, but most of the time it seemed like 5 kind of gave me the story, but sometimes I felt compelled to pull more, and I think it made sense when I did. Um, So we'll see how long it takes me to. Some of these scenarios, like this one really, with the exception of this card, ends up being telling a pretty direct story from the question that I had. And so we'll kind of do it one by one, and if this video gets on alongside, I'll stop and I'll put the other ones in another video. So my first question here, the cards that you see for that question, had to do with an on and off relationship I've had for a number of years. And I've always wondered if it was a karmic connection in this, or like a twin flame connection. And this deck does have karmic and twin flame connections and lessons, but it didn't show up here. But the story that it's given me makes some sense. It helps me think about my life in general, some of the choices I've made, like not to have children. And it also gave me some pretty strong perspective on why he's not all in on this, or why he wouldn't be based on this. So what we have here is Indigenous woman. I'm going to have to look at the fate and see what that relates to. And then it has India. And at first I was confused about getting India and Mexico and Indigenous woman in India, although that's easy enough to see that, you go far enough back and of course you're going to have indigenous peoples. And it could be, it could have been, a native of India during a colonial time or something like that. But what I ended up taking from India was the fact that it was the Taj Mahal, and I don't think that's being represented here. And not to mention that there's a child with the indigenous woman. Because the Taj Mahal, and I started to get this even before I was thinking about the history of the Taj Mahal, that it might be somebody died in pregnancy. And that's what the Taj Mahal is. It's a mausoleum to the wife of, I don't know what he was, the Sultan, the king, whatever they call them, dedicated to a wife that died in childbirth. Now, she had actually borne him many children at that point. And I don't know that that's the scenario here, that there were many children. I think a lot of this needs to be taken very generally. Some things are given very specifically, like Mexico and stuff. But I think this works better taken oh, excuse me, as more general like this. Of course, it shows somebody being burned at the stake like Joan of Arc, um, but premature death. So to me, this is a scenario in which, in a past life, I had known this person that I've been involved with on and off. And in that situation, maybe we were simply lovers, not spouses, um, but that I had died in giving childbirth in that lifetime as a result of that relationship. And again, I could see why that would result, if you're meeting that person again, there might still be that attraction, but also hesitation about the consequences of the relationship. And, the other person, obviously, if I had died in childbirth, I got the raw end of the deal. But that doesn't, mean that this person won't feel also sort of abandoned in some way, or cheated, and I could see how that person would then feel hesitant, in terms of any grief that had occurred. But so this struck me as quite direct, but I'm going to take a look at what she's saying about fate. Fate in Mexico, if it's saying that I was an indigenous woman, then okay, Mexico makes some sense. But I was going to look and see what kind of range. And Mexico is the Ten of Pentacles. So it could have been a person, what do they call them? They call them concubines. They call them, whoever's on the side, not the spouse. Here's our Wheel of Fortune. Here they're just saying it's a shift in luck. So that's when the Fate card lands in your spread, there's a message about your destiny. You probably just went through or about to go through a huge shift or transition in your life. This change was predetermined before you entered this life as something you desired to learn and grow from. So I assume that this is referring to something happening in that past life, not this life. And that's one of the things that gets tricky about these readings, is that there can be layers, I think, expressed in the stories. Was this part of another, and then there was the fate, and then this is a separate lifetime? If you are in an abusive relationship, which I have not been, this is an example. It could be that you desire to re-experience the abuse, but this time end the relationship, or perhaps you worked it out with your abuser to give him or her. So this could be maybe the past, and this could maybe be now, except I'm hoping not for premature death. Anyway, so I'm not going to try to make it all make complete sense, but in general, it made sense to me. Dying in childbirth. So let's take a look at And it made sense even in broader, like I said, my decision not to have children. So in broader, as do some of these other cards, making broader sense beyond the question. So the next one was a question about a prior look into a past life. So it was more like a meditation or a shamanic journey. I think it was a shamanic journey that I went on, but it was prompted by somebody talking about this sort of thing. And when I went on that journey, and it was supposed to be a journey to meet someone from your, I don't know if it was supposed to be an ancestor or past life. In any case, it wasn't at all obvious who this person was, but I met what happens. Of course, when you do these things, you hope to see royalty or whatever, right? So what happened in my situation is I ended up on a rocky beach, and this girl had come down, and she was kind of in the distance to begin with, had come down a cliff path. So I felt like I was in an area that had fjords. So I thought maybe Scandinavia or some place that had very steep cliffs coming down to the water. And so this girl came down and kind of trotted over to me. Very poor clothing. I don't know that she looked me in the eye, but she handed me a little metal, rusted, worn circle, like a little circular piece of metal. It could have been like an amulet or a coin or something. Anyway, so a flattened, round piece of metal. She handed it to me, turned around, and trotted off. Back up the path. And it's like, okay, so it was what it was. But I was always kind of curious about her, and I have returned. And so my question this time was, what is my connection to that redheaded girl? So let me see, I've pulled out the cards that I'd gotten for my various readings here. And the first one is Spain/Gypsy. Where are you? There it is. There's the Spain card. And then True Friend. So that was interesting. That this is maybe a connection from a past life that is not a relative, is not me, but is a friend from that lifetime. So isn't that curious? And then where's my philandering man? Where? There he is. There's my philandering man. And then slavery. I thought it was down. Well, I know I'm going to have loss in here, and I'm going to have, where's the friendship is going to be in here eventually. There it is, slavery. So there it is, Spain, true friend, philandering man, slavery, karmic lesson. Where are you, karmic lesson? Karmic lesson. And lost friendship. So this is almost like, or in parts can be read to me like a storyline, kind of like even Lenormand, where because this is a true friend, That's the way I'm interpreting it, is that this person is a true friend. That this loss in friendship here means the loss of a friendship. I'm not sure what the karmic lesson is here. But this, I was not surprised by the philandering man, because one of the times I went back to attempt to reconnect with this redheaded girl, there was a situation where she got into a boat and was pushing off, and so she was getting into a boat with men, and there was a sense of danger about this. And in the end, there was a bailing out of that boat. I think that was on my part. It's like, something's not right here, something's not good. And so that was what I was thinking, is that somebody was going to be taking advantage of her. So I don't know, and I feel like this is her story somehow, that she ended up kind of enslaved by the philandering man. But I'm not sure what the karmic lesson is. I think in the book it says that this is intended to represent kind of issues with like alcohol abuse and stuff like that. Karmic lesson: balance, peace, self-control. The karmic lesson card indicates a lesson you have yet to grasp, one you have struggled with for more than one lifetime. And there's so many, and this is one of the things that gets me, is that there's so many possible scenarios when you go back in time. Did the philandering man sell this friend into slavery? Maybe we were sold into slavery together. I don't know. So it says here it could be a simple weakness that creates imbalance that you need to learn from. The pain you seek to bury reaches back into previous lives and is not manageable from only considering your current life and circumstances. Now, I hadn't associated this redheaded girl with any karmic lesson, any shadowy thing or anything other than the fact that she was poor. Which is something that is one of my questions, is my relationship kind of to money. And it does say here the karmic lesson arising in this card could be someone else's, particularly if you were asking about somebody else. Or if you are at, and I think that she was at, the mercy of someone else's temperance struggle at this time. Know that their pain is far reaching. And there was a sense of this girl being very subdued. And so a situation of abuse, maybe not slavery, but abuse, is not hard to imagine for her. So that was that. And we're at 20 minutes here pretty much. And so I'm going to end this one, and I'm going to do a part 2, or perhaps even 3, to cover the other stories. And again, it's just to show you the kind of tragic stories, and maybe it's just me, but the kind of tragic stories that can unfold using this deck. So I will see you in part 2.